Last week I went to Redmond, Washington to see the Microvision tech up close and personal and to take part in the Investor Day with 50 other investors of my favorite LiDAR company. We got a bunch of personal FaceTime with CEO Sumit Sharma and CFO Anubhav Verma. I got to ride in the test vehicle alongside of Reddit user Herpaderp Maple Serp and see the point cloud data live right in front of me, with one of Microvision's engineers in the front seat who was there to answer any and all technical questions. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Sumit and Anubhav agreed to stand at the front of a room. For 3 hours, they diligently answered investors' concerns, barely dodging anything at all other than things they were clearly not allowed to talk about. When Moon, they actually had their company lawyer right there at the side of the room, presiding over the questions, and she even took a couple herself about protecting IP and making contracts more valuable. I've already uploaded a video of the entire 3 hours of questioning, which you can find right up here. But first, let's talk about the ride-along, the actual technology all of this is riding on. I won't do that too many more times, I'm sorry. There are still a number of trolls on the forum saying that Microvision doesn't actually have any technology and this is all just an elaborate scam. That's a little silly, but just for an additional peace of mind, I have now seen this thing function in a car on a road with my own eyes. Dog walkers. I'm a little late putting this video together, so you've probably already seen some of the footage from inside the car, and hopefully I can help a little in understanding what you're looking at here, because I get it, this looks like a mess. You may be used to Tesla's beautiful display of little cartoon cars, even if sometimes those little cartoon cars glitch into cartoon trucks for a minute. But what you might not be aware of is that when you see a display like this, it's actually a layer above the actual data. This is not at all what the car cameras are picking up and using. You never see the raw point cloud data or radar data that these cars use to make sense of the world. The actual data stream that Teslas use, that they procure from multiple camera angles and then basically use a little liquid-cooled supercomputer to render the raw data, is this. Or it was this a couple of years ago. They don't exactly share what the raw data looks like. I found 2 different videos that claim to show Tesla's live data stream. This one from 2021 claims that Tesla's raw data stream is a whopping 160 by 120 pixels. If they're refreshing at 30 Hertz, which it looks like they are, it looks like it's refreshing pretty fast, then they're producing somewhere in the ballpark of 576,000 points of data per second. We're gonna hold on to that number for a minute. And with their computational image triangulation, you can get pretty close location data, but you can also see how the edges of the road and a lot of the objects are kind of dancing around. That's because there's a computer looking at several sets of 2D images with no additional distance data attached to them. And the same way you or I use our 2 eyeballs to sort of tell how far away something is from us, they've taught a computer to do that in real time and produce 3D data. With the Microvision point cloud, every single pixel you see is the result of a laser beam coming out of the sensor, bouncing off of something in the real world and returning to the sensor at the speed of light. And every single pixel gets an exact distance measurement attached to it. Every pixel. Again, every single point you see in this point cloud has a precise distance attached to it, and there are 10 million points per second. That's compared to 500 and something thousand points of data for Tesla in 2021. I'm sure they've improved it in the last couple of years, but by a factor of 20? So this data looks like a fuzzy, confusing mess. But this point cloud isn't designed for your eyes. This is what the computer uses for a real-time 3D model of exact location data for everything that's in front of the car. And further, with the built-in perception software from Ibeo, not only does every pixel in this point cloud have distance data, but everything has its own velocity data as well. The chipset is tracking objects and keeping track of everything's relative speed and acceleration when compared to the vehicle with Mavin. So that means if you're driving down the road and there's a kid running out towards the street, the car will know the speed of the kid in relation to the speed of the car and the exact distance of the kid from the car, and it knows it only needs to perform a corrective measure if the kid's going to get to the street before the car gets past the kid. The engineer was talking about how this LiDAR data also has an intensity level per pixel, so different surfaces will reflect the beam differently. For instance, they'll be able to train it to recognize black ice on the road that to your eyes just looks like road. It also can use the intensity data to read road markings, crosswalks, lane markers, shapes of the signs on the side of the road, that sort of thing. The ride along lasted about 10 minutes, and when we were out on the highway, he was showing us how the Mavin can track vehicles over 250 meters in front of the car. That's the whole superpower of the dynamic view Mavin LiDAR. They have a near field super wide beam, they have a midfield somewhat wide beam, and then a long field 20-degree narrow beam that shoots a majority of its energy straight out in front of the car. Sumit was explaining that the highway system, all highway systems, have regulations for the sharpness of corners based on the max speed for a given road. It can only turn so many degrees per mile, or whatever. And the long-range LiDAR has been designed within that spec so that it can always see the entire road around a corner. Back to the Q&A, a few takeaways I had from that. Anubhav is clearly a pro when it comes to not showing his cards emotionally. It was quite difficult to get a read on him, because I figured they weren't going to be allowed to share any secret information with investors after the market closed on a Friday. Surely that would be illegal. So I was hoping to be able to sort of gauge the emotional reaction they would have when answering questions. But Verma was cool and steadfast, and he sounded a lot more rehearsed than Sumit did. That's not to say he didn't sound confident. They both sounded extremely confident. They both kept going back to the message of, we're not looking for like a big media story, flash in the pan kind of thing. We're looking to build the foundation of this company so strong that it can't be beat. Brick by brick.
Rome wasn't built in a day, as we built this business brick by brick.
Sumit, on the other hand, is an engineer's engineer, not an ex-Wall Street money guy kind of engineer. According to LinkedIn, they're both engineers. How about that? And Sumit did get fired up a few different times, and he did offer up a few things we haven't heard before yet, such as, without exception, all of the RFQs that we have received so far have had the stipulation of a multi-range LiDAR unit in a single box, as in dynamic range, as in Mavin. And unless all of the other main competitors are just keeping their specs under wraps, there is not currently another LiDAR module with this capability. Not to mention this form factor, this refresh rate, or possibly most important of all of this within a $500 unit. All of the competition would currently require multiple boxes that would service different ranges per unit. One of the questions Sumit couldn't answer or wouldn't answer was about Microsoft. I guess Mavis's current contract with them is up in December, but he did say, and he even said that he was careful to pick out this word specifically, that 2023 would be an epic year.
I think I've said the words epic, and I really meant that. I mean, it took me a long time to write that. I'm like, how do I describe what the future looks like?
He left it at that. Clearly, the investor that was asking the question was trying to get Sumit to talk about the Microsoft thing, and they both danced around it a little bit before he made it super clear that we're all on the same page.
I just meant with the closing of 2023 and then...
I know what you mean.
Okay, good.
I'm not being cheeky here. I think we still have to be careful how we talk publicly, right? I think, I think we raised for me, we need to develop technology and partnerships, not get sued by some short seller that wants to do some mischief, right?
He did take a question from Matt Pence about AR and VR development.
My name's Matt Pence. I had a question going back to talking about AR and VR. Is there a reason, at this investor day, we couldn't show off that technology?
And Sumit was adamant that he is more passionate about that subject than anything else. He loves AR, but it's just not the right time.
But there's a very specific reason you're not seeing that. I've worked longer in that, and I'm more passionate for that than any of you can even imagine. But I know more about that you don't know. I just don't want it here because it dilutes what we're doing. We're spending your money with this, right? So that's the reason why it's not here. There's no other secret thing. And it's not a matter of that I don't have a passion for that vertical. I'm pretty sure that I can argue about how much more passionate I'm about than anybody else.
It will come sometime in the future, but for now, all focus is on the laser beams. He even said that he's happy to go on record saying that we are best in class with the LiDAR.
There's competition. We are best in class in the LiDAR. I've never said we were best in class in anything else. But in the LiDAR, I'm absolutely confident there's not a single thing somebody will do that will surprise us.
And we can't even say whether we're best in class when it comes to the AR tech because essentially we're the only ones.
I believe that we're best in class in the AR, but it's hard for me to claim that when there's nobody there. I'm the only one, so of course, by nature of it is there. So I pick my words very carefully.
There is simply no competition for what HoloLens 2 does. Concerning the 100 million additional shares to be made available for sale, Anubhav says the reason to have these shares is to have an ammo shed. That's my words, not his.
Why 100? What is the firepower or the dry power the company has in order to pursue deals, in order to pursue accelerate revenue growth and customer adoption? I feel this was the number which will put us right in line with what our peers have left on the tank in terms of going forward. Because keep in mind, the whole idea of building this business is you want to show to the customer that you have this capacity that you can go and expand into and tap into these resources to build a business.
They're not to be used willy-nilly and certainly not to be used right away to dilute the share price, but to be able to show that Microvision has a solid amount of ammunition for growth. In case, for instance, Ford comes along and says, can you guys make 50 million units as fast as possible to get into the next production cycle for our cars? Microvision can say, yes, we have the resources to ramp up production to basically any scale with these hundreds of millions of dollars at the ready. If they need to hire way more people or increase the number of production lines, there will be no delay in inking these deals. So yes, obviously more shares will always dilute the market, but diluting a share price of 50 down to 40 is way better for me personally than not diluting a share price of 15 so that it's 15, if that makes sense. Sumit would not answer a question about how many RFQs are in the queue at the moment, but he did make the comment in casual conversation about how we can look at who Ibeo's been working with, and then he just left it at that. He did also say that he's not leaving Easter eggs, so you're not supposed to be looking for the words between the lines in these things. Overall, it is important to be mindful that we were at an investor relations meet and greet. So clearly the entire purpose of this event was to get the bigger investors more excited about the company, which I think they were pretty successful in doing. So even though we didn't get any material announcements out of this thing, I am eyeballing this old forklift that we don't use anymore at the warehouse after getting a nicer one. That thing could pretty easily be converted into a couple thousand more shares. So for anyone in the extremely rundown old forklift market, that thing ran when I parked it there. It's available. I'm in Orlando, Florida, and I won't ship it. If you want to support my efforts in flying across the country and gleaning any additional information I can about this stock, there's a link on this page just below this video for a set of regular, nothing special about them, set of 3 household scissors. Those are from a failed Amazon FBA project. I have thousands of them in the warehouse. I'm sure you need a set anyway, everybody does, and the proceeds go directly to the Space Design Warehouse burn rate.
LiDAR.